Welcome everyone. For those that are coming in slowly from the lobby, I appreciate it. Welcome to our Zoom world, our Zoom meeting. Today is a public information session for the Summit Avenue Regional Trail Master Plan. We're excited. We have staff members here today who are excited to listen and hear feedback. We're excited to share a bit of background on the project and where we're at and kind of where we're headed here, which is an exciting moment to be sharing trail design concepts and ideas throughout today. And then really to have some good focused conversation and hear from individuals throughout the meeting, or I should say at the end of the meeting, we'll do breakout sessions and have some conversation about it. So I will go ahead and start the slide with introductions. My name is Mary Norton. I'm project manager for the Summit Avenue Regional Trail Master Plan. I'm a landscape architect in design and construction at the City of St. Paul. And working with me on this project, we have Brett Husong. Brett, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Brett Husong. I'm a lead landscape architect, and I'm providing project management support to Mary.
I can go next.
Yeah,
hi everyone. Thanks. I'm Katie Hammerlink. I'm a landscape designer with City of St. Paul Design and Construction.
Thank you, Katie. And then our consultant team at Bolton and Menk, we have some folks there. Maddie, do you want to kick off your team?
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie Dahlheimer, landscape architect with Bolton and Menk. Cody?
I'm Cody Christensen, civil engineer, multimodal design engineer on the project with Bolton and Menk.
And then I'm Michaela Isaacson. I'm a communications specialist with Bolton and Menk, and I'm here just helping out with the Zoom technology. So if anyone has any issues, you can feel free to send me a direct message, and then I can help work through those technology issues with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And then we have some city staff here as well today. We'll be teaming up to take questions and answers and facilitate discussion later on in the meeting. You want to go ahead and kick it off, Andy?
Hey everybody, Andy Rodriguez, Director of Parks and Recreation. Day one, first day, and I get this meeting with Summit Avenue Regional Trail Master Plan. Nice to see all of you and look forward to this meeting.
Thank you, Andy. Go ahead, Alice.
Hi, everyone. Alice Messer, landscape architect and manager of design and construction for St. Paul Parks and Recreation.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, Rachel Coyle with Parks Forestry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Jorgensen. I'm an urban forester with Parks Forestry.
Hi, Liz McDonald, Public Information Officer for St. Paul Parks and Recreation.
Hello, Jeanette Rebar with Public Works.
Great, thanks, Jeanette. Let's see, Ruben, I know Jimmy might not be here yet.
Hi, yep, I can jump in. Ruben Collins with St. Paul Public Works. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jimmy Shoemaker. I'm with Public Works Department, Transportation Planning and Safety.
Hi, I'm Barb Mundell. I'm with the City of St. Paul Public Works, Street Design and Construction.
Thank you. And then Barb, is Eric here today? Not sure yet. Otherwise, go ahead, Hanwen. I know he was tentative.
Hi, I'm Hanwen Westman with Traffic Engineering at the city.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. We have a great team here tonight. Summit Avenue's an incredible place, and this is an exciting moment to be having this conversation. And so we're all looking forward to hearing from community members tonight and just talking through big ideas for a regional trail master plan, so the process underway at St. Paul Parks and Recreation. A little bit about the meeting framework tonight. So participation best practices. So for the front end of the meeting tonight, we'll go through slides. Everyone will be on mute so that we can kind of get through slide content and get information out at the same time to everyone. And then towards the end of the meeting, we'll do 30 minutes in breakout rooms with several staff members. People will kind of break into smaller groups and can share ideas. We have some facilitation questions that we can kind of run through and capture those ideas, and then we'll come back to the main meeting space to share that. Content delivery for tonight, the meeting will be recorded. The breakout rooms will also be recorded, and the slides for this presentation, all the content will be delivered tomorrow on engagesaintpaul.org/summit, which is the main website space for the project. You can find that material under project documents, meeting materials that'll follow suit on Engage St. Paul. And then, as I mentioned, at the end of the meeting, we'll do, or at the end of the slideshow, I should say, we'll do breakout room listening sessions. We'll talk kind of specifically about trail designs and the types of facilities that we're looking at, and kind of hear some benefits and drawbacks from people to those big ideas. After tonight's meeting, just to understand what's coming next, the master plan document itself will be collated, put together based on a lot of the great feedback we've been hearing. And a lot of conversations we've been having with technical advisory groups, design advisory groups, and through Engage St. Paul, places that we're hearing for focus. So we'll get that actual document together and draft out for public comment. So that'll happen this summer, followed by an open house, a public open house that we can share more information about what we heard during the comment period, during public engagement for the document itself. Just another plug for engagesaintpaul.org/summit. So there's some great tools on there for mapping. Many people have been using that. If you haven't been there, I'd encourage you to go check that out. There's an interactive map you can use. We'll talk about that as well, what we've found so far, but it's been helpful to really hear from those who use the corridor and know it very well, what's working and what isn't working, to help shape these ideas. And with that, I will turn it over to Alice as we talk kind of about developing a vision.
Thanks, Mary. So I'll thank you for joining tonight. I'm sure many of you would much rather be out on Summit Avenue enjoying some sort of multimodal activity that happens out there. I will say from design and construction and from Parks and Recreation, this truly is one of the most special parkways in the city, and that goes back to Horace S. Cleveland. So we go back to the late 1800s when St. Paul was being planned, and this corridor was identified as this really important connector from the central core of downtown all the way to the Mississippi River. And the guiding principles of Horace S. Cleveland were really protecting the bluff and the scenic views of the Mississippi River, and his vision of thinking ahead to the future and protecting the spaces was so important. So we are so grateful to have you all here. We truly appreciate all the comments that are coming in. You will hear there, we have a lot of staff here tonight. We have a lot of landscape architects. We have a lot of engineers and planners. So we'll all be actively involved in the sessions. But Mary, as she goes through the presentation, she's going to talk about the guiding principles of the master plan. And these master plans are our guide to the future. So protection of the existing trees, the historic character, and providing safe multimodal aspects of this corridor are really the core of these guiding principles. And so again, we have a lot of information to share, and I thank you in advance for sort of letting us present the information, and then we truly look forward to the conversation. I will also say this is not an easy task. There are a lot of layers as we put these things together, but as we look at how popular Summit Avenue is with traffic counts, traffic speeds, and the number of multimodal activities, it's our responsibility to look at how this bike facility could be safer and entice more people to use it. So I will say we've heard a lot like Summit's great. Why do you need to change anything? And it is great. It works really well, but I think we again have a responsibility to think to the future and how it can be better and meet those safety guidelines because it has been so successful. So thank you all. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our director, Andy Rodriguez, for some comments as well.
Thanks, Alice. Just echoing what you said, both the importance of Summit Avenue and the historical context and planning for the future. When we get into the ideas of master plans and implementation. From a design and funding standpoint, we have a responsibility to plan for the future, like you said. So, and I think the number of people on this call or on this chat show the dedication and interest in kind of what we plan heading into the future and how much people care about the amenities within the city. I also want to note just that up to this point and in the future here for this meeting, others that will come, is that we're listening. And when we get to the outcomes of a master plan, we may not all agree on specific aspects of where those are and how those are finalized, but understanding that's what community process is for, and trying to come to the best possible outcome. So I appreciate everyone for being here today and taking the time out of your evening on this nice evening to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Alice. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the number of people on this call, the people that have been engaged so far, is really a testament to how special this place is. You care. There's a lot of different ways we get to thinking about the future, and I think it's really exciting that so many people are involved in that conversation and are here tonight. So thank you as well. Talking a little bit just about that special parkway experience and the importance of the green space in this corridor. I think that's just a pillar of what we're going to be talking about tonight, and really a really important layer of how we look to utilize transportation and the transportation footprint you'll hear a bit about, and relative to those green spaces. So again, just so important that how that shapes recreation. And this parkway really functions as a park for so many reasons, not only a landscape thoroughfare, but really is a park throughout the city that gets used in so many different ways. So all reasons why it's important you're here tonight and sharing those ideas or being a part of this conversation. A little bit on our agenda. So we'll talk a bit about project planning and background, and we'll touch on the master plan process itself. What does it mean to have a regional trail master plan? Where does that go from here and relative to where we are now? We'll talk about evaluation. What have we heard so far from feedback from community members and ongoing? What kind of analysis have we looked into to inform feasible options or trail options to be discussing about today? And then those trail design alternatives based on that analysis. And then we'll break out into sessions and have some focused feedback on those alternatives and what people think or what their priorities are within the context of this master plan. So touching a little bit on planning context, this in the St. Paul 2040 comprehensive plan, as well as the Metropolitan Council Regional Parks Policy Plan, Summit Avenue is identified as what's called a regional trail search corridor. So the idea of a really important regional recreational trail connection is identified in both those plans. We're in that next step where we're talking about a master plan of a facility. And we're thinking through what does that mean? It's more than a bubble. Let's get down to what happens and how does that play out? What are the drawbacks and benefits? And how do we have those conversations? A key for regional trail facilities is really making those connections to other regional trail units. So the Sam Morgan Regional Trail to the east out of downtown, and then the Mississippi River Boulevard Trail as well. So really being a link to those recreational regional amenities, as well as serving regional connections to important destinations throughout that are important to the region. About regional trails, there's different types of regional trails, linking trails and destination trails. Summit Avenue certainly has a linking trail that passes through important components of that regional park system or significant natural resource areas. They're selected for their ability to intersect with local networks. So in urban areas, they often serve as commuting routes as well, or serve additional to recreational purposes. If they're really important connectors to public interest destinations, schools, jobs, a lot of this activity or this corridor has that as a characterization of it. And so we're exploring those next steps about why. Another important piece of, why a separated trail facility. So what exists on Summit right now are painted on-street bike lanes that have been there for a long time and work very well for many. For some, they also do not. Traffic volume on Summit carries enough vehicle traffic that industry best practices would recommend a separated facility. And so that's at the core of why a separated facility and what is a separated facility. And that essentially means taking the trail itself or the bikeway and bringing that up above the curb. So there's some physical delineation between roadway travel and bicycle travel. So comfort and safety too. Separate trails facilities provide a more welcoming, more comfortable, safe place for a variety of all users and all abilities. So that's also at a core of what we're looking at in looking and evaluating existing conditions. It does work really well for many, but for many it doesn't. The proximity of use is too much, and we want to be able to look far into the future about how people can expand recreational opportunities and really create safer spaces for access on that facility on Summit Avenue. Again, I mentioned that regional trail planning context. So this is in yellow highlighted that regional trail search corridor or Summit Avenue itself as a parkway in the context of other regional facilities or other regional trail facilities. So it's a really important east-west connector across the city of St. Paul. And what about other routes? We've certainly heard that, why Summit Avenue? So as I mentioned, high volume, not only of vehicles, but just high multimodal use that's already happening at Summit Avenue. And the connectivity is really important for recreation. Regional trails, excuse me, are placed in regionally desirable settings. So again, this is serving a wide range of users and settings that can provide those high quality opportunities for people to get outdoors. Parallel routes in this area, Grand and Portland, would present similar design issues that we'll talk about today. Kind of the idea of parking and green space and space allocation still exists there, but in different contexts certainly, and also narrower right-of-way conditions. So Summit is unique for so many reasons, and that's why we're looking at this for the regional trail master plan. Some of the project, project details and background. So again, an important link. We are focusing a bit of our planning. There's a interest in the Lexington to Victoria section. So that is planned for reconstruction in 2023 through Public Works Capital Program. And so as we look at high level, the whole corridor, there is a real-time build component to Public Works Capital Improvement Plan for Lexington to Victoria for reconstruction. So we're looking at if a trail facility is planned, how would that inform a built project that is in the works? And so there's a bit of a lens that we're really looking at as an important from a time perspective as we talk through these big ideas. Project goals, again, to improve recreation and safety for all users. We're really trying to find a balance. We're trying to find that balance between modernizing infrastructure. So we know certainly Pave the Road has been loud and clear, and people who've moved down that roadway know it could use some improvement. Curb cuts, things like that, accessibility standards, infrastructure and time needs to be modernized. And so we want to think to the future when those opportunities exist. How can we balance that timing and bringing more facilities up to provide longer term use. So again, supporting that evolving needs of users as well to really create a more people-oriented corridor, excuse me. Summit Avenue functions so well as public space and has, since its early conception really, and we see that play out today in many ways. And so this is another step in that process and in recognizing it as important public space and adapting to evolving needs of users. I'll touch on area projects. So things happening kind of in and around the context of the master plan. Some actual built on the ground activity that will be seen separate from the master plan, but in the queue for Public Works, going back to Pave the Road, certainly, which again is of course important. And the good news, there are planned mill and overlay for Snelling to Lexington in 2022. That's a great thing. And then, as I mentioned, that Summit Avenue reconstruction plan for 2023. And I'll put in a plug too for Grand Avenue reconstruction, just knowing that activity will be happening in and around the area. Again, just recognizing that connection to other places is important and how people move to those places. So that activity is planned for 2024. The MRB to Sam Morgan, or the Regional Trail Master Plan, excuse me, is unfunded for construction. So this is a master plan process. We'll develop a document with recommendations, as I mentioned, that'll be out this summer. And that is the planning process itself, but it's unfunded for construction. Trail master plan areas. So the key in the upper left is kind of divided by segment. And so what you'll see in the master plan document later this summer, we'll provide recommendations kind of specific to segments. So that's kind of just a guide for the future when we get to that, when that document's out for public comment, that'll help you kind of understand where certain recommendations are being made and kind of how they apply to those portions of the corridor. Generally speaking, the composition of the corridor is broken down. There's a pretty defining moment at Lexington where we have east of Lexington, which is a 100-foot right-of-way, characterized without any medians. And then, I'm sorry, east of Lexington, a 200-foot right-of-way. So that's where we see those broad median green spaces. The median green spaces have two different types. There's one large open median, a 90-foot green space characterization. And then from, I think it's Wheelock to Saratoga, there's a double median. So we call that the double median, where it splits and the main traffic is through the center of those medians, and then characterized by frontage roads on the outsides. So those are kind of two when we talk about 200-foot right of way or median and no median. Those are some of those characterizations that occur within that corridor. On the eastern leg on screen here, you'll see, so there's Summit Avenue all the way to Kellogg Boulevard. The leg from Kellogg Boulevard down to the Sam Morgan Regional Trail is also part of this master plan. But we won't be focusing on the cross section there because that facility type is already sort of programmed or planned within the Capital City Bikeway planning of the city. So that cross section would be identified as part of Capital City Bikeway. And then Eagle Parkway has an existing footprint or existing cross section for a multi-use facility there. So what we're really working to understand are how would a trail sort of occur in this section where that it doesn't have necessarily a separated trail facility. A little bit about project schedule. So we began evaluating the corridor and connecting with stakeholders and community members through the fall and the winter. We started to identify again these character or the characterizations of the corridor: median, no median, double median. We began to understand more about the green space and the historical context in the winter. We had our first technical advisory meeting, the TAC and the DAC. That's what that stands for. TAC is our technical advisory group, which is mostly agencies and internal departments at the city, kind of organizing that from a technical lens. And then the design advisory group made up of community leaders and stakeholders to weigh in on the process. And then our second, 2 weeks ago, or I'm sorry, on the 23rd and the 25th, we had our second TAC and DAC meetings where we started sharing concepts. And so that's why we're excited here tonight to again share those same concepts that are out in the community. So folks can relay to design advisory groups or other community organizations and make sure that we sort of capture those ideas together at the same time. And as I mentioned, after this, we'll be drafting that document itself with recommendations that would then go out for public comment from there. After that public comment period, we'll refine the document and then we'll work towards an approval process in the fall that would go to Heritage Preservation Commission, the Transportation Commission, Parks Commission, City Council, and then Metropolitan Council Parks and Open Space Commissioner, or MPOS. I'll touch on evaluation a little bit here. So community engagement, I mentioned the website engagestpaul.org/summit has been a great way for us to understand feedback themes people have for change in the area, what's working, what isn't working, or where they don't want to see change, certainly. And so some of the key feedback we're hearing, the prioritization of green space and canopy, really making sure that we limit those impacts, any impacts at all, and focus on preservation. So understanding the sensitivity to ash tree removal in the city, and just making sure diversity of species is important. So again, really a key high component of that park experience is that focus on green space. Also safety, so crossing and turning movements, minimizing conflict points, the idea of high volume and multimodal uses happening in this corridor, and finding ways that we can minimize those conflicts in turn lanes and mid-block crossings or median crossings that people run and use those. Again, those parkway medians function very much as pedestrian space too. Traffic and vehicle speed, so vehicles moving too fast, proximity of use. So we've heard a lot about people being uncomfortable in those spaces on street through traffic and parked cars. So a desire for more separation between the modes occurring on Summit Avenue. And then facility conditions, certainly the pavement itself, the surface walkways heaving, and But on the good side too, a lot of people noting just the wonderful 10-foot sidewalks east of Dale that are characterized by the corridor. Really important way that kind of shapes pedestrian space and civic space is notable and something very desirable in the corridor. And then touching on the unpaved spaces, so the median itself, that sort of desire path or footpath that we see in the median is great and unique. It creates a unique running experience in the city. So we've heard that a lot from people to keep that. It's charming and don't touch that. It's unlike anywhere else. So we're hearing a lot of this in the community. And then again, certainly no change, definitely sensitivity to keeping it as it is, the way that it is, and being really cautious about how we go about change in the corridor, recognizing that historical context, of course, and the way that it functions now. So hotspots that are developing on the map are just areas that we can draw from where people do see room for improvement, certainly, excuse me, the connection points. So I think safety and intersections is really important, the way that people cross again, and the way that people have sight lines and visibility, ways that we can improve that are very clear. I think valued park and green spaces. So Summit Avenue in and of itself can be in a recreational space, but also being an opportunity to connect to other underutilized or opportunity areas for green space in and around Summit Avenue are important. Creating really important connections in transition. So Abe Mill, for example, the bridge that was recently redone, and then a paved separated facility down below. So a desire to reinforce that connection and again, create more opportunities to connect to transit or other modes as well. So multimodal connections. A little bit of the survey breakdown there, just the neighborhood participation. We've received at least for now up to 800 or more responses. I'm hoping we'll continue to keep on keeping those surveys open and hearing what people have to say, certainly as ideas come out for the concept of a trail itself. So a lot of great conversation happening in communities, recognizing the pavement itself, that condition as being a high priority to redo. Concern about, of course, the trees and maintaining that health. Traffic control is important, parking as well, and some of those conflict points for parking and moving bicycle traffic. I think maintenance, so city, so on-street bikeways or their conditions throughout the year. I think a key component to a regional trail facility and is the desire to have it maintained year-round. Some of the on-street conditions are a little more challenging to maintain. Clear treadways in the winter, and certainly in those mid seasons when things are slushy, of course. But just the desire to keep a high quality path open because it's frequently used. A little bit touch on historical context. So as Alice mentioned, kind of the early planning of Summit Avenue, of course, creating this incredible, noteworthy public space. Characterized really by that wide, those wide medians, those broad boulevards. The early Sanborn backs are reflecting those 100-foot avenue itself. And the spatial organization of land patterns is really important for cultural landscape. So this landscape spans 2 historic districts and is a cultural landscape in and of itself. I think these aerials or these photographs are very interesting just to see again what's endured. You can see those double medians back to the early 1900s and how people have moved about the corridor. This photo here had a temporary path at one point, so in the median itself. And then just again, it's fascinating to see kind of early planning of public space and how these spaces feel now that mature trees and mature landscape have developed in this public space. We're living in a time where we're really these rooms have been created by this green space, and we all get to enjoy that as this landscape has evolved and endured over time. So certainly want to recognize that. And again, early on in planning, so cycling routes in the Twin Cities, we're in an era of thinking about future planning and transportation planning. This is another moment in that conversation. Just thinking about local and regional transportation, kind of how people are going to connect to places. Not necessarily even today, tomorrow, but of course, 20, 30 years from now, how people will move about in the city. And so Summit plays a key role in that conversation. Thinking about consistencies through time, what sort of has endured and changed. And then the evolutions of the roadway. So speaking specifically to, again, that wide public right of way as being really important. Those expansive green spaces, characterizing the area, even back to the early conception, noting, Summit was an excellent parkway and favored those wide green spaces over the segmented parks. So that pattern and rhythm of landscape is really important here. And we want to come alongside that and complement that and really focus on the roadway itself as a transportation space, knowing that those aspects have evolved in various ways. The materials itself have evolved, and walkways and bikeways have as well. So just touching again on the historic districts, 2 historic districts spanning Summit Avenue, and looking at those patterns in the landscape through aerials, kind of 1923, as you see here, and then 1945. You can see those patterns enduring through time, and even those footpaths, those kind of desire paths through the center of the median show it back, to the early 1923s. So bring us to modern day and existing conditions. We touched on modernizing infrastructure. Aid Mill Bridge was recently redone to again bring to that next era of finding opportunities where infrastructure needs to be rebuilt. In the lower left here, we see a section of roadway. Certainly that paving condition is very clear. That is an opportunity for rebuild. Those desire paths or those run paths kind of in the lower right. And then those great sidewalks east of Dale, again, those rooms that are created, that public space characterized by those wider walkways. Touch a little bit on winter conditions. So used in the winter, certainly for recreation space as well. Those kind of center medians continuing to function as kind of park space. We've heard about people building snowmen or enjoying recreation out there, even right after fresh snow, people are running. So it's exciting that it does still function as that winter park space as well. And then in the lower left, you can see just touching again on that winter maintenance challenges that exist with on-street facilities and the ability to kind of keep that clean as an on-street bikeway. Reiterating the fact that green spaces are really integral to design, and you'll see that as we start to touch on that approach for trail alternatives, how we're gonna navigate, making sure that we keep that the green space being integral to the design, because those canopies are really creating these incredible parkway experiences, and we want to come alongside that as we're looking for ways to increase safety in the corridor. So our evaluation objectives, as we're looking at ways to increase ped and bike safety here, and create comfortable trail experience for really all ages and all abilities. So trying to meet a facility that can support that 8 to 80 use and support high quality regional trails. We certainly understand the compatibility with the historic district is really important, that we recognize that and work within in that framework to come alongside it. Where we're starting to get to that kind of push-pull of that edge condition, are looking at parking functions in that transportation space and balancing that kind of impact at the edge that we'll talk about. So the design alternatives that we're looking at are really looking to balance a variety of objectives and interests here. With respect to forestry, so we've walked the corridor recently to look at on the ground kind of what that edge condition is. As we know, we're looking at this transportation footprint and working within the current paved spaces. In the master plan document itself, there'll be a chapter that speaks to stewardship and natural resources and operations and maintenance or planning for a facility to recognize that. Those natural resource features are an important component of the regional trail. And so that will be highlighted in the master plan document itself. Tree health across the corridor is generally characterized as good. There's variability in that, of course. Various factors influence tree health, age, pests, disease, environmental factors. And so all of those things are at play with tree health, but generally speaking, very good across the corridor. The importance of maintaining that curb line is really an important consideration for preservation of those green spaces. And so we want to recognize that, especially in the 100-foot section, so to speak, of the older parts of Summit Avenue, where we have some conditions where we have grade changes as well as being a factor in sort of how we approach reconstruction or putting a facility at that edge. the 200-foot right of way, there may be more sort of flexibility in placement of that edge or more wiggle room potentially. But again, just in any concept, kind of looking to minimize that change at the edge condition. And really, when a construction project would begin design and construction, they'd be evaluating that segment or that portion based on existing conditions, so specific to where the build would happen. But generally speaking, a design approach for this facility would look to minimize that edge movement. So knowing that priority on green space for the corridor, we wanted to start looking at parking. Okay, if we're going to work within this transportation footprint, are there areas where either it could be underutilized or reallocated for trail transportation? So there's two studies you'll see here, one taken in September 2019 and the other more recently in February this year. So this first one, the overnight parking restriction study, so this was done in 2019. These are snapshots of parking conditions. They were moments in time to look at roadway maintenance, this one in particular, to see if that could be improved. Generally speaking, the key findings from this particular study was that parking utilization was observed at about 50% or below most of 50% for most of Summit Avenue. Consistently, it was observed high near Dale Street and then about 50% near University of St. Thomas. In 2022, the key findings of that study, this I should clarify too. So the previous study was a corridor-wide study, so that really looked from MRB to Kellogg. This particular study was done east of Lexington. So that was the 100-foot right of way. We're a little more constrained there. So wanted to understand if the findings would be the same or different. And generally speaking, it was modest. It was about a 30% utilization, but same consistency at Dale for high volume during that particular study. So again, these are two snapshots in time, if you will, but to get us thinking about, okay, well, are there better ways we could utilize space or consolidate to make space for that trail? And so that really leads us to these design alternatives where high priority in parkway green space and preserving that mature landscape. And so to do that, we want to work within that transportation footprint and look at potentially removing parking on one side to accommodate that facility. And in doing so, provide that separated bikeway as the regional trail facility. Recognize that's not always, these are big ideas, of course, and there's many ways we can get there. But understanding that we are looking at this as a transportation piece as much as anything, and understanding that by minimizing that edge condition or the movement of that edge, that is in and of itself a way to maintain that tree health and reflect on that cultural landscape component as well, or those spatial patterns in the landscape. So ways that could play out potentially if one side looks at removing parking. In east of Lexington, the possibility to vary that parking removal occurs. So it could chicane, it wouldn't necessarily be all the way on one side or the other, and it could be more of a context-based approach to limiting parking to provide a facility. You'll see when we get to concepts, we're going to be talking about a one-way style facility or a two-way style facility. These are examples of what that tends to look like. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but something again above the roadway bed and either a shared use or I'm sorry, a two-way bicycle facility or one-way. When I mentioned the one-way trails or two-way trails, which you see on screen here again, is kind of a little bit about how that could play out. Again, these are above the curb, if you will. So a buffer space, all of these concepts reflect on having or have on them a buffer space for a green sort of area for certainly function for maintenance, but also kind of for a recreational buffer between the treadway and through traffic. What you'll see as we go through these facility types, the edge, the existing curb line in red, and then in a kind of shaded red area, that kind of potential impact zone. So again, just thinking about that movement of the curb and what would be sort of necessary to implement those types of facilities. So again, one style of facility would be the two-way, where you have obviously counter-directional to traffic, and then the one-way style, which is similar in traffic flow to what's out there now, but elevating that above the curb. So in the 200 foot right of way, this is that single median condition. So where we have that large kind of 90 foot median in between. These are one-way roads characterized. You can see the large medians kind of play out here. And this is actually an example as infrastructure kind of modernizes or crosswalks might become shorter. That occurs in the landscape, but still characterized by a broad median space. And potentially how that could play out in the 200 foot right of way, excuse me, with that central median. This is the existing condition with the on-street bikeway with a buffer to it, playing out between parking and through travel. What you see here is that, again, that existing curb edge. This is an example of that one-way separated trail with parking on both sides. So this keeps parking functionally, but again, elevates that trail facility. We're able to keep impacts pretty minimal here. This is one area where there was a little more wiggle room from that edge condition, so to speak, from a forestry perspective, by being able to keep parking and accommodate that one-way style facility. When we look at a two-way separated trail, this is where we would need to essentially remove parking on one side in that segment in order to accommodate that two-way style facility. And what you see play out here is that by taking the bikeways off of one side, you end up with additional space essentially. So that could be green space. It could widen that median. But again, a big challenge or kind of push-pull there would be removal of parking on one side in this area in order to create that style facility. In the 200 foot right of way again, so this is the double median. So that's Saratoga stretch, or near Snelling, I should say, Snelling to Wheeler to Saratoga. That is where the through lane kind of comes up through the two medians, existing bikeway here. And the way that this would play out, so parking isn't a factor here necessarily. In what I'm going to go through are essentially ideas that we've looked at, but either are still on the table or would not be recommended just because those boulevard impacts would be too much. And so what you see here is that one-way style facility playing out, but not being recommended because of the boulevard impacts that carries. The next one would be a two-way style facility, and this one is able to hold that curb edge. You're essentially taking that through travel and consolidating those bikeways and moving them to one side for a two-way facility. In the 100 foot right of way, so now we're east of Lexington, where we don't have a median. The conceptual alternatives here essentially look at, again, we'll do the same thing. I'll go through existing conditions and then what is recommended or would not potentially be recommended because of impacts. So what exists on street here, in the previous sections, you saw that there was a buffered space or a wider striped buffered space. We're in that narrower right of way now. So we have the on-street 5 foot bike lanes between parked cars and through lanes. The first one we looked at were those one-way style facilities, accommodating that, and the impacts were large enough that, again, we would not recommend that just because of certainly the mature landscape and the movement of that curb edge. So in order to accommodate that facility and keep parking, that's how that played out. The second one would be to remove parking on one side or maybe vary it. I think we're still looking at those impacts as just being probably more than would be beneficial in that facility type, really holding that curb edge. So that one is not recommended. And this one here shows a two-way facility, but keeping parking on both sides. Again, we're far enough beyond those curbs that boulevard impact would be too much. But looking at a two-way style facility here with removing parking or varying parking, I should say, but reducing it to one side. So that's in that scenario, we're able to kind of hold that existing curb line and really minimize those impacts to those mature landscapes. So just to recap, what we're going to do next, we're going to have a breakout session. We're going to have some conversation. Everyone will be, we have 6 different rooms that folks can go into. And each facilitator will have some slides to prompt questions and start to hear people's feedback. The big idea here, things we really want to hear from people are about these styles of facilities. They're two very different ways of moving about the corridor. They each have benefits and drawbacks to them, but we want to hear kind of what people think about how this could shape that public realm and what that looks and feels like, and where people see those priorities. So again, we'll kind of touch on that one-way trail and two-way style trails. And with that, before I kind of jump through, is there anything my other colleagues, Brett, Alice, others want to share based on what we went through? Otherwise, we can kind of get to the discussion, the fun stuff. Okay. So yeah, just going back to those evaluation objectives, keep those in mind as we're talking about big ideas about this trail facility and what we're looking to take away from that, and thinking about that transportation footprint and how that plays out to create space for the trail facility itself. And so with that, Michaela, I will have you kind of break us into those 6 rooms. Again, our task here is really to talk about those trail experiences and what that could look and feel like as we kind of get into our space. And then I'll just ask facilitators when we're in those rooms to introduce yourselves, and note takers. We kind of each have a staff member for notes and someone to facilitate conversation as part of the process. So.
Awesome. Yep. I'll break you all into rooms. And then Mary, I did want to let you know that I was able to get a countdown. So once I hit close like breakout rooms, you'll have 60 seconds before the rooms will close for good. So that'll be flashing up at the top, near the top of your screen. So you'll see that. And so that way, hopefully conversations won't get cut off mid-sentence.
Great. Thanks, Michaela. I appreciate that.
Yep, no problem. And then I take it we'll re-adjourn at 8:15 still, or did you want to go till 8:20 since we went a little bit over when we were initially going to break out?
Sorry, Michaela, can you say that one more time?
Do you want us to re-adjourn at 8:15 or do you want to go till 8:20 just so we get a solid 30 minutes?
Yeah, I think 8:15 is fine. I want to make sure we have some time to report back what people are doing as a group. So
perfect.
That sounds good.
All right, and with that, I'll open all the breakout rooms and you will all be moved automatically to them.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We had some good conversation going in group 1. We were talking a bit about the roadway reconstruction and kind of how that interplays and the need to reconstruct roadways and how that endures and has that need throughout other streets in the city. So we were talking a little bit about that. So I want to welcome everyone back from their groups, and we'll point to our recorders now, or our folks on the call to help summarize ideas. I'm going to come back to, I'll share our board on Miro, and we can kind of go through each group and share what some of those big takeaways were from each group. And I will go ahead and start with feedback, and we'll go ahead and drop those in notes as we go. Here, let me go ahead and share the screen. Jeanette, are you ready to share some of those big takeaways or big questions that we had in our group? You can hear me? Did I lose you, Jeanette?
Sorry, I'm here now. Sorry about that.
That's all good. All right.
So I would say kind of the feedback we heard in room 1, and I will say we had a lot of different opinions about kind of making sure we're preserving the trees, concerns about the current road condition and making sure we're reflecting that. Some considerations of, making sure what we're working in is in the current space, so we're not impacting trees as well. Thinking about the different types of bike users, both who would use a trail and then those who would stay in a roadway. And then just ongoing maintenance of both the existing road and then also, any future trail or future construction. So that maintenance was a question that came up. And then also just thinking about all the intersections, depending on the type of potential trail facility, how those interactions between driveways and intersections would occur. I'm sure, I know we talked about a lot more, but I think that's a quick snapshot.
Yeah, I think that's great, Jeanette. I appreciate that. I know, again, I think there are many folks in our group that shared concerns about, certainly about impacting trees and the concern about as part of this project or as part of road. Mentioned the interest of creating safer space for families in the roadway. So I do want to mention that as well.
Yep.
But I think, yeah, a big focus on certainly on maintenance and understanding that that is a desire for current conditions as well as any sort of future conditions. And with that, I will turn to group 2.
All right, thanks, Mary. Our group, we didn't go through all of the questions, but people wanted to just voice their opinion on broadly about the trail itself. So there is a couple different sides of it here. Residents thought that the people that are living there, it should function for them, and since they're taxpayers, there's also plenty of space out there where we can't even maintain right now. So adding a trail would be difficult. But there are also other people that are residents that say that the space is for everyone, and this is a community space where a lot of people are using it for biking, pedestrians. So there's a little bit of back and forth there. A lot of people, or I'd say several people, brought up safety as the #1 priority. And that means safety for all users. And so they were supportive of the grade separated trails. There were also questions about the regional trail itself, and this being is this the right placement? With questioning the driveways, the intersections, and typically a regional trail would be found in places that had less conflicts. And then I guess finally people thought, one person said that parking should be the lowest priority and safety should be the highest. And we really didn't get into specifically which one way or two way was better. And finally, I will say that tree preservation was brought up. That was a big topic.
Great, thank you, Brett. I appreciate that. I'm going to pan over to group 3. Group 3, ready to share?
I'm going to pass it over to Jimmy or Rachel.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy, did you have good notes? You did.
I took some, and then maybe you can fill in the gaps where I missed.
Sure.
Rachel.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff. Concerns about tree removal, concerns about parking removal, but perhaps more specifically how that might affect people who use wheelchairs or mobility devices and might need front door access. Concerns about the cost and how the city plans to pay for it. We heard some people say, why maybe you should just leave it the same. It seems to function just fine from a biking standpoint. But then we heard other people maybe counter that and say, I can't use it right now as it is designed because I can't go with my kids. I wish I could go with my kids, but I can't. I don't feel safe enough. We heard some people talk about the interaction between bicyclists and pedestrians. So making sure that, those spaces are thoughtfully designed so there aren't conflicts between those two. And also just better crossings of Summit from the pedestrian standpoint. A couple people mentioned historic district and maintaining symmetry of the street and what does that mean for different bike facilities. There were concerns about winter maintenance and how paths might be cleared in the winter. And one person said that it might actually be simpler to clear from a maintenance in the winter. A lot of concerns about the speed of cars and how to slow cars down. What else did I miss, Rachel?
Not much. I think, some of the things that people brought up regarding, in addition to a separated trail, was to have bump outs, elevated crossings, to reduce the number of crossings, to lose some of to create more green space, but also to lessen the traffic patterns, I think, on Summit. But I think for the most part, it was really kind of safety related, either that it's safe enough or not safe enough was kind of where it was left.
Great. Thank you so much, group 3. Is group 4 ready? Get through. I only have about 6 minutes left. I want to be conscious of folks' time here.
Yep, I can jump in and start, and then Liz and Ruben, if you have additional things to add, feel free to jump in. I think our group, we had a very lively discussion, and we talked, I would say primarily about project process, more so than specific design alternatives, and a lot of conversation about a general desire for more information. So that was related both to the determined alignment of a regional trail along Summit, providing some additional information related to safety. So potentially posting the crash data we have available to the Engage St. Paul website so people can see that. I had one more data point on there. Another big point of discussion was kind of talking about the number of intersections and number of driveways and considerations that need to occur. If safety is our top priority, what's the consideration happening there? And a little bit of back and forth on, bikes are crossing those driveways today. We're just doing it in a little bit different manner if we separate that facility, but certainly looking to provide some more information on how that works. There was a little bit of conversation, but some additional comments in the chat just about maintenance. So I think providing some additional information about maintenance and who's responsible for maintenance and how that will be maintained or what that level will be. And then lastly, I think there was a little bit more conversation in the chat than in the dialogue, but some comments about pedestrian facilities along the sidewalk and keeping that part of the conversation along with determining the bike facilities. Liz and Ruben, you think I captured some of the big bullets?
Yep,
Yeah,
I don't
I
have
think
anything to add.
that pretty much covers it. Aside from the general comments about wanting to keep the historic feel in the trees as much as possible, which is absolutely a priority for us.
Mary, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Unwind. Group 5, heading over to group 5. You ready? Is that Cody? Who's group 5?
I just found my mute button.
There you are.
Well, Jack or Barb, if you have comments you want to add, I can speak from my memory as I was not jotting things down. But we also talked more just a general discussion on the corridor, not specifically the questions on the slide deck, but definitely the concern and question about trees, tree loss, how many is it going to be? General inquiries about the process of the project. Why Summit Avenue? Is this a done deal? Where are we going to have opportunities for more public input? Questions on how driveways work with the proposed raised bikeway. Question of making Summit a one-way with Grand as a one-way pair. There was another one thrown out as putting the bike facility on the alleyways behind Summit. Barb or Zach, anything else to add?
Yeah, Cody, I can jump in. There was a lot of talk about safety, right? Both as it exists now and in the proposed drawing. So a lot of comments about, the type of bike user, whether it's commuter or recreational, safety of separated bike lanes, safety of driveway crossings. A lot of things have been mentioned already similar to that. There was also a note about traffic and traffic management. So recognizing that Summit's a residential street with a speed of 25, and how do we enforce that? How do we make that a safer aspect of the project as well? Also questions about engagement of folks in the neighborhood and throughout the rest of the process, how that's going to work.
Great, thank you so much, Group
Can
5.
Can I
Oh,
just
yeah,
add,
Barb,
I
please.
just a couple of notes that I also took. There was a brief mention about the historic value. And then there was also, where to go, a comment that some people had said, why can't we leave it the same? And other people said that the existing bike lanes feel constrained and constricted, and that it isn't safe for everyone. And I think everybody agreed that we want to make Summit safe for all users, for everyone. There was, the one that I was looking for that hasn't been really mentioned yet was there was a lot of concern about the loss of parking. And I also feel like there is a sort of misunderstanding that it's not that the city is looking for a location for a regional trail, but how can we make biking and all modes safer on Summit? And a regional trail is just one idea to address the safety issue. And those were some of the notes I took. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. I appreciate it. And then we'll move quickly over to Group 6. I know we're at time, so if folks have to drop off, please, thank you for being here. I know it's an evening and everyone's time is really important, especially on a nice night. But go ahead, 6. We'll capture this feedback and then I'll share next steps in the process.
Try to do this real quick. I think a lot of our points have already been hit by the other groups. A lot of talk about preservation of the beauty of the corridor, the trees on the corridor, the history of the corridor. The comments related to bicycling, I think, ran the gamut from wanting to see no bikes on the corridor to wanting to really improve conditions for bicyclists on the corridor and build a facility that allows everyone to feel comfortable biking in the corridor. Comments about don't forget the people who use it today, including residents who need to park and young families who already feel comfortable walking on the sidewalks, and how that might change. Maintenance also was mentioned, and plowing, and in both a keep existing condition and a potential trail condition, maintenance was important, and plowing the snow off of them. And then there were several questions that we'll pass back to the project team and make sure we answer in another format.
And Mary, I will add, there was comments about not being heard and wanting to make sure that voices were heard in the process.
Thank you, Group 6. I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone's time for being in those groups and having those respectful conversations together. We know these are big ideas, and they'll continue to shape community conversations, certainly after this meeting as well. And so to touch on kind of next steps or what we see from here after this meeting. So the goal of this meeting certainly was a public information session to get these ideas out and posted online, and potential design ideas to share, so community conversations can continue to happen. So the document itself we'll start to put together, which will summarize analysis that we've looked at, the potential trail ideas or separated facility ideas. Will come to that. Stewardship plans, those implementation pieces will come together in a draft, and then that will be available for public comment this summer. There's a 30-day comment period that we do, and then a public open house that'll be a part of that as well. So more to come. People had asked kind of how continue to be engaged, or how to have voices heard in that process. The comment period would certainly be a great point, because that'll be a culmination of these ideas and the conversations that we've been having and that we've heard, and then the way that'll kind of play out in the some of those more specifics about operations and maintenance, a lot of the touch points that have been talked about, crossings, best practices to increase safety, and kind of how those recommendations would occur in the context of the master plan. And then in the fall, after we've had an open house and we would refine things based on comments we're hearing through that process, we'd move forward towards approvals in fall of 2022. So yeah, next steps, I'd encourage you to stay engaged on Engage St. Paul. So tomorrow and the next day we'll get these recordings up from the project. There'll be a survey that is available specific to design. So specific to those ideas that you saw here tonight, will be available on Engage St. Paul, so people can share a little bit more about this idea of a one-way or two-way facility, or specifically think about in the corridor what that would mean or how that would shape the public realm. And then when that document's available, that's a great time to again, to get public comment out specific to the document and what's being captured in that, so that we can refine it to respond to that. So I'll also mention an FAQ we're going to post. That was a great recommendation that came out of our design advisory committee last week. So we're gonna expand that based on a lot of the items that we've heard here today, or have continued to, and then share that with certainly with our design advisory committee groups, and post on the website so we can get some of those FAQs answered quickly. So with that, I know we're at time. I want to just say thank you again for everyone. I know these are big conversations. It's an incredible place in the city to be thinking about today, tomorrow, and into the future, for the many people that use it now, who live there, certainly, and for the many that can use it in the future to make a space that's safe for everyone and more access. So any closing thoughts from my partners or others on the call? Not so much. Okay. Appreciate all the staff members too that took time and took notes. It's great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Mary.
Take care.
Thanks, Mary.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.